Shalom, shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. May God bless you. God be with you guys. How you guys are doing today? It's been a long time, almost like 3 weeks that we could able to meet you. By God's grace, today we do have some time to post this video. And thank you so much for patiently waiting for us. And I was having cold, and my voice was not good. It was a little rough and thick, but now I believe and I think that my voice is much more better and it is audible. And I'm also excited to meet our rabbi today. And we do have, we're going to do some interesting topics today, I believe. And let us not waste our time. Let us dive in, invite our rabbi to the panel. Hello, Rabbi. How are you?
Shavuot.
Wow, it's been a long time, Rabbi. I didn't see you. I'm really, really longing for this day to come, and I could able
Oh,
to speak. Yeah, I could able to speak a little bit now because my throat was even now is 98%. The 2% is still hanging though, hanging there, not completely because I think the flu strand this time what I had is a little bit heavy,
hmm.
um, big, thick, heavy. That's why my voice was really lost for that couple of weeks. Now I'm good. I'm
I'm
okay. I'm fine.
glad you're feeling better.
You look smart and handsome. You got a haircut, I believe.
I just trimmed a little bit around here. I need a
so,
haircut, but yeah.
so how have you been all these days? How was your life? Tell us.
I'm doing better. Uh, Also, I think a lot of people have been uh, struggling with their health or their sleep, and then it's a cycle. If your sleep's not good, then your immune system's weaker. So, but I'm doing better. Thank God.
Okay.
We're looking
S-
forward to victory.
Of course. And I'm positive that definitely we will get the victory. And Hashem would never fail Israel.
Amen.
Okay. So I have more than 1,000%, faith in that one. So I don't
No
have
doubt.
any, no doubt, without any doubt, for sure.
As sure as we
So,
are that we're
boom, boom.
ah,
No, I don't know. Something is going on. Yeah. Which one I'm going to go? Ooh. There you go.
okay.
Got it right. So, so Rabbi, I first thing I want to ask you a question. Okay. Yeah, we don't have any formatted this time, but I'll ask you. What is that logo in your WhatsApp?
Ah, I put up pseudo Palestinian flag, which is
Yes.
actually just it's not a flag of any indigenous group to the land of Israel. Why? They claim on the public stage, the enemies of Israel in that region claim that the people of Israel are the foreigners invading their land, and they claim that they are the indigenous. But in practice, everything they do shows the contrary. Everything they do, from their language, Arabic, which is not native to the land of Israel, to their religion, which did not originate in the land of Israel, to their flag, which is actually a pan Arab flag. Pan Arabism refers to the concept of the entire Arab world being like one empire. It's not a flag that represents an indigenous community. It's nearly identical to the Jordanian flag, which is nearly identical to the flag of the Ba'ath Party of Iraq, which was the political party of Saddam Hussein. And the three colors of that flag, they are pan Arab colors. These are not colors, it's not a flag that any indigenous community would adopt. The symbolism of that flag has nothing to do with the local native indigenous culture of the land of Israel, so called Palestine. It has everything to do with the conquering of native peoples by the invading Islamic Arab armies uh, more than 1,000, roughly 1,400 years ago, give or take a few hundred years, depending on what exact area you're talking about. But yeah, that's the flag. I put up the Palestinian flag on my WhatsApp account as my profile picture. But
Yeah, no water, no electricity, no food.
yes, but we added. I don't remember exactly where I got it from. It's not original to me, but it's it says, well, it has in the red part of their foreign flag, which they try to impose on our land. They have on the red part of their flag rockets. Then on the top part in the black it says no food, because these are the things that they go boo hoo they don't have, right? While their leaders are billionaires, living in luxury, and yet they cry no food, no water. But then at the bottom it has on the green part of their flag, but plenty of rockets, right? Plenty of rockets.
Yeah. So the question is like, is this flag represents Hamas or the Palestinian?
This is the flag that's adopted by the, I say, pseudo or so called Palestinian establishment because the very way they use the term Palestine and Palestinian since around the 1960s and on, the very way that they use these terms is substantially different from how the term Palestine and Palestinian was used before the establishment of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was the first real example of specifically Arab Islamic Palestinian national identity. It never existed before that. So this flag was adopted by that establishment. And the fact that it was adopted is just one more of many testimonies. It's just one more testimony to the fact that they're not a native indigenous group. Their identity is not native or indigenous. And even if some members of their society happen to be from families that have been there for centuries, the identity that they have taken upon themselves is not indigenous. It's as if there were to be within Indian civilization, the Indian subcontinent, it's as if there were some small elements of the Indian population that suddenly associated with the US government officially, and has rejected Indian identity, and has embraced everything about the United States and now wants to impose US law on India. That's the equivalent of what they're doing, even if some of them happen to have some older ancestry. That's what they're doing. The
So
identity they have taken upon themselves, everything about it is foreign to the land of Israel. Everything about it, it doesn't matter where your background is. What matters is what ideology do you hold, what values do you hold, what is your culture, and that is not the local native culture, not the native language. Nothing about it's local. Nothing about it's authentic to the land of Israel.
so I mean, so it's I can take this one as a Palestinian flag rather than representing Hamas flag or something. It's just
Correct. That's right. That's right. However, Hamas is the Palestinian government of the Gaza Strip. It was elected democratically. It represents the Palestinian establishment in the Gaza Strip. And although there are other political parties among so called Palestinians, there's really not that many, but although there are a few others, most notably Fatah, which is more popular in Judea and Samaria, so called West Bank. Okay, the so called West Bank.
yeah. I was
So,
about to ask the question that like West Bank people claim that they are not connected with Hamas. Why
well,
Israel?
some of them
Yeah.
are, but it's not as popular. It's not as popular in the in Judea and Samaria. It's better to refer to it as Judea and Samaria
Mhm.
because the term West Bank is a term that was also never the name of any country. It was always the name of a foreign occupation. It's very funny and it's insulting to the intelligence of people to act as if to expect that we would be fooled to think that the West Bank is some legitimate political entity or national entity. It's not. The West Bank, this term was began to be used by the Jordanian government after it conquered that area of the land of Israel. That's the origin of the entire thing. The historical term for that area is Judea and Samaria, which testifies to the local indigenous origin of the Samaritan people and the Jewish people. Samaritans, their homeland is most attested in archaeology is in Samaria. The Jewish people, their homeland is Judea. And to repeatedly refer to it as the West Bank, I mean, I know we have to refer to it sometimes as that because the enemies of reality, the enemies of Israel, have been so successful at erasing the term Judea and Samaria that most people don't even know those terms. They don't even know what it refers to. They know West Bank. But it's ridiculous and insulting to our intelligence to claim that the indigenous people there are the foreign occupiers of their own homeland, and to claim that those who identify with the West Bank and Arab imperialism, Arab colonialism, to act as if those are the native people. This is insulting to our intelligence. Uh, so, yeah, Fatah is the Palestinian political organization that's most popular in Judea and Samaria that they are occupying. And although they are not equivalent to Hamas in all regards, but the world needs to know that getting rid of Hamas will not solve the problem of violence, it will not solve the problem of the murder of innocent people, whether Jewish civilians or Arab civilians in the area. Why? Because the differences between Hamas and Fatah, the differences between these two parties is not with regard to endorsing terrorism. Support of the murder of innocent people is not one of the differences between them. They share that in common. They share that in common. So you can just completely obliterate Hamas and you're still going to have Palestinian terrorism, Palestinian Islamic terrorism, and massacring of Jews. I mean, there are the PA, the Palestinian Authority, which in the West Bank is dominated by Fatah, the Fatah political party. It officially praises, glorifies, and makes cultural heroes out of terrorists openly. They name streets after them, they build statues in their honor, and they use international aid money, even which comes from the US, in order to incentivize the murder of innocent people. If you murder, for every Jew that you murder, you get a certain amount of money, and if you died in a suicide attack, then your family gets money. And that money is coming from international aid. Every single European or every single Western nation that invests in this society, in the Palestinian Arab Islamic society, they're investing in the murder of innocent people. There is a difference between any decent moral government, any decent army. There's a difference when that army may make errors and maybe civilians die inadvertently. That happens in every war. But there is a difference between the inadvertent, unintentional killing of innocent people or the unfortunate death of innocent people who are accidentally killed because they were trying to kill a terrorist, but the terrorist had, I don't know, a baby hidden in their jacket or something. That is fundamentally different from an army that has as its official policy the targeted and intentional killing of innocent people. That's black and white difference. A person who does not understand this difference should not be in civilized society. It's a fundamental difference. If you cannot understand that a person who is accidentally killed in a car wreck, I don't know, because your car malfunctioned. Let's say someone died in a car wreck because your car malfunctioned. If you cannot understand that that is fundamentally different from someone who got in their car and saw a pedestrian walking across the road, and he intentionally ran over that person, and he said publicly that he did it on purpose. If you cannot understand the difference between these situations, you have less moral and ethical development than a 5-year old. It's- you're spiritually and ethically corrupt, and it's just unbelievable. Like, it really leaves me speechless.
Yeah,
That's the
I
difference between Israel and the Palestinian establishment. It's a fundamental difference. There can be mistakes on the part of the Israeli military, as with every government. And there can even be individual soldiers who may do actions that are unjust. The difference is that anyone who behaves in such a way on the Israeli side, they're acting contrary to Israeli policy. If a Palestinian acts in such a way and murders civilians, he's acting in accordance with the Palestinian establishment's policies. If an Israeli soldier is proven to have done any kind of disgusting deed, intentionally gone out of his way to murder a civilian, he's going to be treated as a criminal by the Israeli government. He's going to be a shame to the Jewish people and the people of Israel. We will be ashamed of him. He will be punished. He will not only not be a hero for us, he's going to be something that we are embarrassed of. With the Palestinian establishment, they do the same exact thing. Not only is he not put in prison, but he's rewarded and he's celebrated even by people who don't support Hamas. This is a problem in the entire Palestinian establishment. This is what the world needs to understand. Palestinian identity as it exists today, it is not a race. It's not its own race. It's not a unique ethnic group. It's not an ethnic group. It was established in the 1960s as its own national identity with the sole purpose of destroying Israel. It's not even a legitimate nation. If you think that's a legitimate nation, then you should consider the Nazis their own legitimate nation. It's disgusting. Anyone
I
who
know.
holds this way is a complete idiot. They're either, I'm sorry, they may not be a complete idiot. They're either a complete idiot or they're ridiculously uneducated and should not be given the time to speak on this matter, or they're truly morally corrupt. Those are the only options. You have to be really uneducated to naive. Like,
Yeah, I agree on that part totally, Rabbi. I totally agree what you said. I do have a question for you that, you know, the events happening right now. I mean, it happened from last October month of, I mean, 7th of October starting from now. um, if you could see the events, the war, the capturing the places, and then also the countries are joining and putting hands together, against Israel. Almost 30
mhm.
countries, Arab countries are kind of are coming closer together, and Western countries are trying to, have mind playing around here. So what do you think? Do you think that can you connect these things in any of the biblical predictions or anything? Is it close? Because the Christian community is totally going out and predicting a lot of things. This is the time. This is going to happen. This and that. What is in your opinion? And what do you think?
Well, there seem to be patterns throughout history, and also there are different potentials if we're talking about biblical prophecy. And the negative potentials that are given or negative prophecies, doom and gloom prophecies, they, according to mainstream Jewish tradition, and I'm not talking about from 100 years ago, I'm talking about from Mishnaic and Talmudic times. The mainstream Jewish tradition was that every single positive promise that God has made, if He did not put a condition on it, those positive promises, those positive prophecies, they're going to happen. But the opposite is true for the negative prophecies. Negative prophecies of doom and gloom, all of these sorts of things, they do not have to happen. God did not tell us these terrible things that may happen just in order to scare us. What kind of a God would that be, to just tell you terrible things that are going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it? Like, I don't know that that's merciful. If there's not, what? How is that a noble trait, to tell someone that something terrible is going to happen to you, but there's nothing you can do about it? Wouldn't it have been better that you just don't tell them, and just let it happen unexpectedly so that they can enjoy their life until that point? But rather, the traditional mainstream Jewish view has been that God tells us in advance, warns us about these negative things, doom and gloom judgments, with the potential that we can avoid it. God tells us these things so that hopefully, if we will heed, if we will exercise our free will to listen and take it to heart, that we will repent, not only as individuals, but as nations. And by repenting, we will avoid the negative thing. So, all of the negative prophecies in the Bible, by traditional Jewish understanding, are avoidable. They don't have to happen. The question is, at what point do you reach the tipping of the scale, right? At what point do you reach the point of no return, where, okay, time ran out for repentance and now it's going to happen? There's just nothing you can do. That's the debatable point, and for sure such a point exists. But that point is not made black and white in the text of the Bible. But when it comes to negative prophecies, even I personally am not of the view that negative prophecies are always absolutely in reference to one singular event, unless it's explicit in the text. But I think it is in the same way with the negative prophecies in the Torah that we find, especially toward the end of the book of Deuteronomy. I think the same thing is often the case for the sort of vague negative prophecies that we find later on in the Bible, which means that there's a potential for them to repeat multiple times. So it may be that prophecy X could have been fulfilled 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, but I think it could be fulfilled again and again and again if we don't heed the word of the Lord, if we don't heed the word of the Lord through the prophets. But that's in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah, I get the point. Yeah, I understand because I was also because nowadays there are a lot of messages from the Christian community.
Mhm.
Connecting the dots. They say that yeah, Gog has come, Magog is joining, and this is the end of this time. And
Oh, well, I really do feel for people, though, who this is not, there's not unanimous understanding about this, but I feel for people who are, I don't want to sound condescending. I think that it's unproductive to be hyper focused on figuring out different prophecies and figuring out if what's happening in the news right now or what happened in the news last week is what's being referred to in verse 3 of chapter 5 of whatever book. I find that counterproductive if you are doing this while not giving at least equal weight to God's commandments. If we just sort of brush God's commandments under the rug, but we spend a disproportionate amount of time focused on trying to figure out these prophecies, what is the point of what you're doing? It sounds to me more like you're just taking bets, like a group of men drinking beer, watching a horse race or something. Like, if you're not going to heed the commandments, or at least try to understand God's commandments and do them, then what are you wasting your time for? What are you wasting our time for? You know, they go
uh,
together. Keeping the commandments and heeding these warnings go together. But
I mean, they
most of
they
the
in other words, they're also portraying that God is not a loving God. Why would a God would do all these, you know, killings and murdering and deaths and all these things to make the world in a perfect form? Can't they think that in a common logic? And that's not the way that automatically we are portraying a God who is not loving the world. If a God loves the world, he would make it happen like this. So that's what we should think of, rather than this. Oh yeah, this is going to happen. This one, everybody is going to die.
If you think that if you think that it's unavoidable and there's nothing you can do to avoid it, and that God has not given us the tools to avoid it, I agree. That would make God a cruel God. But if God has given us a way to avoid these things or to get out of it once it has started, uh, and that these judgments of God are really a consequence of the absence of his commandments, of the absence of us doing his commandments, right? So that these negative actions, these terrible judgments, they're really just a natural consequence that God is indirectly responsible for, in the sense that God created the universe with consequences, cause and effect. God did create the universe in that way. So, in a way, you could say that God has um, set the ball rolling for these judgments. But he set the ball rolling while telling us you can and should get out of the way of this ball which is about to roll over you, right? I'm just talking about cause and effect, the same way that if you do not wash your hands after you were playing in the mud or taking care of dirty farm animals with feces, and then you go and you eat bread with your fingers and you get diseases
Infection.
in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
So in the same way with moral decline in a society, when the society rejects basic timeless principles of morality, when society rewrites history, knowingly rewrites history to justify doing terrible things. In the same way, terrible things are going to happen, and God did create the structure that makes that happen. But God is not making that happen specifically to you or to me or to anyone. It's God created the system, and then God warned us that this is what's going to happen if you do not follow instruction XYZ, right? But the way that many of these people uh, who are frankly dealing with these prophecies in a sort of entertainment way, because for me that's what it looks like to me. If you're not looking at these doom and gloom prophecies of the Bible in an effort to revive observance of God's laws, if you're not talking about it in order to motivate people to go back to keeping Torah, God's instruction, then you're really just it's a form of entertainment for you. You're like eating popcorn while it happens. But yeah, and that kind of mentality is one that really kind of says, okay, it's set in stone, nothing can be done about it, and yeah, that makes God out to be a cruel God. But that's not the God of the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not only applied to the mankind or humankind. If it is a plant kingdom or animal kingdom or any other outside species,
Cause and
if the
effect.
cause and effect, if they're going to violate some rules, they're going to get those consequences.
Yeah,
Everywhere the same thing. So humankind is not anything different from them.
right.
So same thing.
We
If
just
you
held
don't,
to a different standard because our intellect is greater. Our
yeah,
moral understanding, or at least capability to be more understanding ethically and morally, is greater. So we're held up to a greater standard. They say the the taller you are, the harder you fall, or the higher you are, the harder you fall. So the same with us, like because we have such great potential for good, there's sort of a balance there in potentials. The great potential for good sort of leads to a great potential for failure as well, a greater potential for failure.
I think
But
I'm
it's not.
thinking in this. Yeah, it is more because the God has given us the wisdom and knowledge in everything. So it is more expected from the humankind than the
Exactly.
anything on animal or any other because they don't think that much what how we think and we act.
Yeah,
So it is more expected than anything else that what He has
and
created.
it follows it follows reason. It's very logical. If you build a taller building, it's going to fall harder.
Yeah,
If you have the potential to invest millions and millions in some project, some great project, or I don't know, terrible project, it doesn't matter. But if you have the potential to borrow millions and millions of dollars to see some vision come true, that also means that you have the potential to go into millions and millions in debt. If you don't make smart decisions, even though you had that much greater potential than a lot of people, because some people
Yeah.
can borrow more money than other people depending on their behavior, financial behavior. So yeah, once you get that ability to borrow millions and millions, that also means that you have greater potential to go much worse in debt than the person who's sitting on the side of the road begging for food. He might not have a car, but he also doesn't have the ability to go into as severe debt as the really rich person. It's like universal laws. These are principles that they're just true. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. God
Amen.
is simply, yeah, I'm not going to say simply, but God, whether or not someone wants to believe in God, whether or not God exists as a conscious being or not, when we say God, we're referring to the embodiment of timeless principles. He's like the summation of timeless principles, right? So even if someone doesn't want to believe in God, I'm sorry, but there are certain principles in reality that are going to catch up with you, whether or not you believe in God. This is just the way that it is. You can reject God all you want, but 1 plus 1 still equals 2. It's mathematical. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, fantastic, Rabbi. So one more, another question for you is like, I know that this is what it surprises me. Probably you might have an answer. Something is different happen in this in this um, we can say war, or the way that Hamas attacked Israel. Very different. After they attack Israel, so Israel warned them that they're going to go in the city, they're going to take out everything, and after that, they were talking about the global effect of this one.
Mhm.
I couldn't believe that how they could make it possible all across the globe. Talk about UK, France, Canada, or in Australia, how these teams operated. In UK, it's almost like 100,000 people marched on the streets. In France, it's like 15,000 people marched on the street. In Canada, it's like 10,000 people marched on. So, and how this eruption, where all these days it was hiding, and who operated this, how they get connected together.
It
What
happened in
is
plain
this?
sight.
So how this is really something that how long they've been working on this one.
It happened in plain sight. In plain sight. And it has been reported in the news for many years. There have been many people who have been raising red flags. They've been warning people, and they just get labeled racists or Islamophobes. But there are many people who have been sounding the alarm about this. The idea of a global jihad, that is not new. That's nothing new. Okay. Uh, when when there were calls for intifada, uh, there have so far been three noticeable intifadas. Um, every single time they called for global intifada. Intifada means uprising in Arabic, but it doesn't refer to just normal uprising in the sense of rebelling against a corrupt government. When they say uprising, they mean uprising in order to murder civilians, specifically Jewish civilians. Okay, that's in the Palestinian context. But we know that that's just one aspect of a greater Islamic extremist context where it's indiscriminate. Maybe it starts with Jews, but it ultimately leads to the murder of Christians, of Hindus, of Buddhists, and atheists, whoever disagrees with Islam, their version of Islam. But that's nothing new. Okay, that what is new is that over the last 15 years, there's been a massive wave of immigrants from the Middle East, from Islamic countries that have poured into Europe and into Canada, into Australia. And these immigrants, you know, anyone who opposes it, they simply say, oh, you hate brown people. That's been the argument. Oh, you're just racist if someone opposes it. And racism, of course, actually exists. But the opposition to these massive waves of immigrants has not predominantly been because of the color of their skin.
Hmm.
I'll give you a great example. Uh, President Trump's so-called, and I really want to capitalize that if I could, so-called Muslim ban, right? All of his political opponents made an uproar about his Muslim ban. He banned the immigration of people from specific countries, all of which happen to be Muslim. Okay, so that's how they made the excuse. Oh, it's a Muslim ban. It's terrible. He's just racist. And I don't know since when Muslim has been a race. It's not a race. It's an ideology, a religious ideology. But you did not have to be a genius to understand that this was not a Muslim ban because the Trump administration did not ban the immigration uh, of poor people, of educated people. He did not ban their immigration from all Muslim countries. He banned immigration from specific countries that are Muslim. Okay, not all Muslim countries. There are roughly 50 something Muslim countries in the world. If I remember correctly, it was about between seven, I don't remember the exact number, between 7 and 10 countries that are Muslim. If it was a Muslim ban, he would have banned more than 50 countries. Really, probably more than 70. So the point I'm trying to get at is that people have been talking about this problem for more than a decade. And every time that they point out that there's a serious problem here, then political opponents who are overwhelmingly on the political left simply try to shoot down the warnings by saying, oh, you're just racist. Okay. And again, you can't, it's a shame that I have to say it so many times because I don't have the privilege of having darker skin. I have other privileges for having lighter skin. I don't
Yeah.
deny that. But in Western society, they are obsessed with race, obsessed. And not every individual, but in politics, they're obsessed with race. But the reality is that people of every race have certain privileges depending on the context that you're in. So if you're a darker skinned person and you live or you go to a country where most people have darker skin, you're not going to stand out as much as somebody who has lighter skin, and you're probably going to be discriminated against less. It's just reality. Maybe you'll be discriminated in negative ways or positive ways, but people might treat you differently. The same is true if you're lighter skinned. When it comes to politics in the Western world, if you have lighter skin and you say anything uh, about anyone who happens to have darker skin, if someone does not like what you're saying, they can make the cheap argument that, oh, you're just being racist. And for most news networks in the United States, in Europe, in most news networks, if they make this argument, well, then that just shut down the whole argument. No, they automatically win.
Hmm.
And it's not logical. It's not honest. It's a dishonest method. Again, if President Trump's restrictions on immigration from those certain Muslim countries was racist, then he would have banned it from all countries with people who have darker skin, which is not what happened. Not at all what happened. He specified certain Islamic countries that have unique problems of terrorism, unique issues of terrorism, exporting terrorists and funding terrorists, terrorist organizations. Those are the countries that he wanted to ban immigration from. And what happened was the radical leftist forces of Western society did the exact opposite of what they should have done. And they opened their doors, particularly, especially to people from the worst societies of the Islamic world. And it doesn't matter what their religion was. Okay, we can argue back and forth whether it's because of their Muslim beliefs or some other beliefs. But the fact of the matter is that those particular countries are major funders of terrorism, murder of civilians around the world. Those particular, if they were Christian, it would be the same problem. If they were white or Chinese or black African, I don't care what. It doesn't matter. What matters is the behavior, and they happen to be Muslim.
I mean,
I do believe that.
recently, if you see, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Recently, if you see in the newspaper, there is a pastor in South Africa.
Mhm.
He has, I think, 100,000 membership in his congregation. Maybe multiple congregations he might be having, but in his group he
Okay.
has like 100,000, and all of them together converted into Islam.
Wow.
L- I couldn't believe that. They follow the leader, and the leader announces one day, we are going to convert Islam. Everybody convert. It's called Corinthian Church in
Wow.
South Africa. I couldn't believe that. How it's possible? I mean, like 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, that's fine. Maybe even 100 people, it's okay. It's about 100,000 people. How come they can think alike to
Wow.
convince? To convince. This is what I couldn't believe that, because
I doubt
in the,
that they were all convinced. I doubt
I'm
it.
not sure.
All you have
This
to
is the
do is
news.
all you have to do is provide some sort of financial or nutritional incentive. You just need to get the people dependent on you, your congregation. If you have a good charity going, and a lot of them are dependent on you for food, or even if you're not completely dependent on you, but you're helping them a lot with food or some other financial thing, well, then they're going
Uh,
to be a lot more open to listening to you. And that's usually the way that it goes. Usually the way that it goes.
Yeah, the people, what I'm talking about is when I started the question about how come these many people were, coming out on the streets and supporting Palestine, and different
Hmm.
countries and different numbers of people. They're not only Islam people, they are people
Yeah,
out of any religion.
yeah, yeah.
Every So they all joined together. That's what it is. Like how and Hamas was warning always, all the time. They said that we are having a huge network.
Hmm.
You wait and see how it's going to affect. Our network is huge than anybody else, so you're going to see what consequences you're going to get it. So that's what they showed up, and still they're showing that the countries in different places and different areas. How come these people gather? I mean, how they initiate all these things. That's kind of a little bit a scary one. In this war, it is exhibited, not in any other play, any other times. It wasn't like this before. This is the first time ever happening across the world that people coming out and like kind of getting a voice for this. Um, this Israel. That's why I asked: is there any prophetical thing is getting revealed or something, because the world will come against Israel? Like.
I can't I can't debate something that I haven't researched in depth, but I do know that this is not the first time that there have been international riots against Israel. Now, you could be right that this is the first time there have been such large numbers. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But this was also a war where we had the highest numbers of pro-Israel supporters as well marching. I'm not really
Oh yeah.
sure. That, I'm not really sure that the numbers are higher, and maybe they are. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know for myself, but even if they are higher, it could be also because of social media. People have much greater ability to communicate now, to spread information, whether it's true or false. It's much easier. At the click of a button, you can send it to 100 different friends. So people feel, whether they're actually educated or not, people feel more educated than they used to. Could have been in the past, they felt more like maybe they were more aware of their ignorance. And if you're aware of your ignorance, you're more likely to be humble and not do these stupid things. But
No, I
go ahead.
agree. The global population has increased, like when you compare to some years back. right now. The global population itself increased a lot, so
Correct.
there should be numbers and hike is also comparative, and you see that of course it's going to be like that. But there is another phenomena now. Right now, another thing is coming up. It's really shocking to me. That's my one of my questions. The in especially in America, the youth, the young generation, they're kind of leaning towards Osama bin Laden.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What's going on? What is that? What's happening there? Did you see that?
And, yeah, I've heard about it. It's hard to say that that's the majority, but even when we mention about majorities, if the majority is not as bad as we might think, but if that majority, which is not that bad, is silent, then it's kind of irrelevant. And that's true whether we're talking about the majority of Palestinian Arabs, who maybe the majority of them do not want to see every Jew murdered. I don't know. But if that majority is silent and letting a minority call the shots, then the majority is really invalid. The same is true with Jews regarding any matter. The same is true with Americans. So I really find it hard to believe that the majority of American youth support Osama bin Laden. I highly doubt it. But if the majority of American youth are pretty much quiet on the topic, they're silent, but that part of American youth which is making a loud voice are the ones who are supporting it, then it doesn't matter what the majority is. What matters is the one, is the population that's making the noise. That's what matters, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, I think that this whole thing is a consequence of a conscious effort in the US education system, and certainly not every single teacher. I don't even think most teachers. But I do think this is the case in the US education system for the majority of influencers of the US education system, the policymakers, that they have had a clear agenda since around the 1960s and continuing into the 70s, where you had uh, educators, professors immigrating to the US who were coming over here bringing their communist ideas into the United States with full intention to transform the United States into a communist society. And there has been a conscious effort in the education establishment of the US to use the educational system in the US to transform the US into a communist country. And this is part of it. Because the standard of living in the United States is much higher, even for poor people in the US, their standard of living is well above average income in poorer countries. Like most poor people in the US would be considered completely fine in most
poor
less
countries.
developed. Right.
Yeah,
So because poverty is less of an issue in the US, it's mainly just among people who have no family, who are mentally ill, or drug addicts. Those are the only real impoverished people in the US. Excuse me. So because that's the issue, the typical or the traditional arguments of communists, which relies on uh, income inequality to be the main instigator of establishing a communist regime, since that's not as strong in the US, so they've had to put much more emphasis on uh, racial differences and also on they had to find other class differences. So because finances isn't as big of a thing, people, even most poor people in the US, are more or less comfortable, right? They may be upset that they don't have the car of their dreams or a big house, but as long as they have a cell phone, as long as they have a cell phone and they have a TV, they're and they have some food, which is not a problem for most, even not for most poor Americans, then they're happy. That's how Obama
yeah,
was one of the ways he won his election. He promised people free cell phones, and they were happy with that.
yeah.
So what do? They don't
When
have
he
that issue.
You don't need
They
food,
don't have,
food or anything. If you have a cell phone, you don't need food or anything, nothing. Yeah, just
of
go and
course.
watch TikTok and
And it means that food is not really a problem that you have. If you're motivated by a cell phone, you're not really worried about what you're going to eat in your next meal, right?
Mm-mm.
So because we don't have that issue, and that was the traditional issue that communists use in Russia and in China to gain support. So what they have done is they've focused on race problems, race relations, and tried to find uh, other issues that categorize the population into opposing classes. So they focused on race, but they also focused on like LGBTQ issues, gay and straight issues. And it's not so much that these leaders really care about gay people, right? It's not so much that they care about trans people. That's the more recent issue. They don't really care, the leaders who are promoting this stuff. But they're using these issues in order to divide the country, and if you can put people against each other in the same country, then it's easier to make the country fall and then rebuild it in the image of your communist utopia, quote unquote utopia. And these issues, all of these issues are valid issues. There are problems between different racial communities, of course. Most people, whether they're conservative or liberal, right wing or left wing, most people know that racism exists. The question is, how do you solve it? And do you solve it by focusing more on the problem and giving a voice to the most extreme sides of both sides? Is that going to solve it? Or do you solve it by not giving attention to the most extreme voices? Do you solve it by giving a voice to the moderate voices? Do you solve these problems by giving a voice to the people who are not extreme, who actually want to solve the issue? The Communist Party, and it's not only the literal Communist Party, there are communists in the Democrat Party in the United States. Their methodology is not to give strength to the people in the middle. Their methodology is to amplify the extreme voices. And that's how you know that their intention is to destroy the establishment that we have, which is not perfect, but it's a lot better than what they want to create. They somehow think that if they create a communist society in the United States, they're going to do it better than the Russians or the Chinese have done. And of course, they're arrogant fools for thinking that. And there are people who will say, "Oh, it's not communism; it's socialism." You have the same basic problem, and communist leaders have taught from the beginning that socialism is a necessary step to communism. So it's really just a different approach and how to get to the same thing, which is an unjust society. You know, it's only good in theory, but that's the cause of this. They've wanted people from unstable countries to come in, from the least stable Islamic countries, to come in to the Western world intentionally to upset the establishment and make it more easy to completely replace the democratic sort of, I don't like the term democratic, but that's what most people think of as fair elections. They want to get
So
rid of that.
socialistic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is really unbelievable because the immorality reached its heights like never ever before. Like like LGBTQ you were talking about in India, it's so prevalent. It used to be like hidden. It never
Hmm.
comes out. So it's not socially accepted in India. But right now we could able to see all these marchings on the streets, main streets,
Hmm.
with these people, and there are so many things happening. It's something like the way that the world been infected by these things. The immorality is so high.
I think that the immorality is not. I'm very different from the average religious person when it
Thinkers.
comes to these topics. I'm very different. I recognize that. So I don't really expect you or other people to agree with me on this. But I don't think that the immorality is in the fact that a person is gay or straight or trans or whatever they are. I think that the immorality is in how the person deals with this fact. A normal straight person does not wake up one day and say, I'm attracted to the same sex, right? A straight person does not do that. Even if they tried, they're not going to be attracted to their own sex. I don't agree with the idea. I think it's overly simplistic and intellectually dishonest to think that any of these people simply chose one day, oh, I'm just going to choose to be attracted to my own sex and I'm not attracted to the opposite sex. Nobody chooses that. I don't think the immorality is in the fact that they are gay or lesbian. The immorality is in how you deal with it, how you go about living life given that fact, right? Um, but the problem is not only with people who are gay or lesbian or whatever. The biggest problem is with the people higher up who are using them, and they don't realize that they're being used. These people don't realize they're being used. But the bigger evil are the people who are higher up, who are using them in order to destabilize society with hope that that will give them an opportunity to replace that society with some sort of socialist or communist government, which every time has been attempted has been horrendous. It's led to horrendous atrocities, far more than Islam has ever committed. You know, they is communist societies have committed more atrocities than even the Nazis committed. All of that is horrible stuff, but there's just no comparison. Like it's not worth risking. But that's what's going on. And I think though that when it comes to, I mean, this is a whole topic into it in and of itself, but I really think that we all share a bit of responsibility in these problems because number one, these issues of LGBTQ type issues have always existed. It's not anything new. Um, However, the religious establishment typically has sort of brushed it under the rug, right? And yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that having people march half naked in the streets is any kind of solution for anything. Right? I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's disgusting. But it's just as disgusting if you have straight people marching half naked through the streets. What I've seen in the religious establishment is that there tends to be an over focus on these issues. And we should look at these issues, LGBT issues. They need to be talked about, right? And solutions need to be given. But I feel like it has sort of been used as an excuse by the religious establishment of every traditional religion, not just Muslims, but Jews and Christians also. I feel like we've used it as an excuse to ignore the bigger problems of immorality among straight people. They will make a big deal about gay pride parades, but they don't do near the amount of protesting when it comes to straight parades where people are immodest as well, just as immodest. And the difference is more people are going to be tempted by the straight parades, tempted to commit adultery, tempted to have sex before marriage. Way more people are going to be tempted by straight parades with immodest straight people than will be tempted by the gay people. It's all immodest. But I feel like the gay stuff has been used as an excuse by the religious establishment to not have to deal with the problems that are even bigger. And they should look at problems in the LGBTQ communities, but they need to look for solutions that are reasonable. The typical solution has been, oh, you should just get married. That's not a solution if the person is not attracted to the opposite sex. How would you? Let me ask you a personal question. I don't know if you have your own family or not. You don't even have to answer the question whether or not you do. But if you had a daughter, a normal, healthy, pure, innocent daughter, would you want her to marry an an obviously gay person? Like, would you want her to do that? How
Yeah,
is that?
I wouldn't. I mean, definitely, I wouldn't. My daughter or my son or anyone, no one. I wouldn't do that one exactly, you know. But I'll tell. I'll give you an example. I'll go. This.
Mhm.
Think about this. This is real. I mean, what I'm going to say
Yeah.
is real picture because I'm seeing it every single day in my life. So I'm living in Washington D.C. I am
Okay.
seeing two men walking. with a baby
Mhm.
stroller and a baby inside.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
think this is a very normal scene in Washington
Okay.
D.C. How do you like? What is that you were telling? Think about the baby which is growing in that family.
Yeah.
It is not growing in a normal situation. When
Oh,
it goes
I
to
agree. I
school,
agree.
when it goes
I
to
agree.
school, the situation is completely different, and it is increasing. It is not
Yeah.
decreasing. It is increasing. This
What
is
is
what
it?
I'm
What is
talking
your
about.
solution?
This
I
is what I'm
have
talking
several
about.
ideas. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking. The immoral
But
things.
what is the solution? What is the solution?
Well, there should be strict rules and laws or something that they should bring it up. Like they cannot just give it at yeah, it's in everybody's will, because you're breaking the law. You're violating the law. You're breaking the nature process. That shouldn't be
Okay.
there, because natural process is something. It is not that when God created, He didn't create, Adam and Steve. He created Adam and
Do
Eve.
you, do you want to have? Because I this is one of my favorite topics because I mean it's personal to me. I know firsthand a lot of top things related to this. Um,
We'll
so
talk
I
at
have a
we'll talk
lot.
at a big topic about this one, no problem. But I'm just giving you a hint on that.
So I'm okay with talking about it right now or in
Oh
a
yeah,
separate video. That's your call.
go ahead and talk it out, no problem.
Okay. So yeah, I know about the Adam. God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. That's of course, right? Nobody argues with that. Um, but these sorts of this is what you call a cliche argument that doesn't give a solution, right? Even if someone recognizes that God created Adam and Eve, God did not create Adam and Steve. How does that solve the issue? We we need to recognize reality. Number one,
Okay.
yes, God created Adam and Eve. Okay, that's reality. But we also have to recognize the other reality. There are people. There's two realities that are part of the same greater reality. God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, right? God also created people for whatever reason and by whatever way. I don't know how, because there's more than one way it's possible that it happened. But God has also put people in the world who are not attracted. Let's say that they are Adam. Let's call them Adam. There are people who are Adam today, that's men, right? There are some Adams today who are not attracted to Eve at all. It's just completely not there. So, what is the solution for them? What is the solution for them?
Okay, I'll tell you, because this is not in the gene, or it is not by birth or something.
Okay.
It
Okay.
is being adopted on the go. Okay, you didn't,
Okay.
you cannot come and say I am coming out of the closet today. No,
Mhm.
you were not, you were into something different. That is not in the gene. That's not the God created gene. These are all,
Okay, assume it's not in a gene.
yeah.
But the question is, how do we deal with it?
This is
What is the
this is
solution? What
this
is
is
the
the
solution?
strict. If your country want to go in a proper way, the country
Hmm.
decides that this is what the natural process. This is the natural law. The country is based on the nature, or natural law mean. That means the country should have a good, strong policy saying that
What?
a man should be with a woman. It
Yes,
cannot be
yes.
with a
There's no debate about that. We're not.
yeah.
My debate is not about that. My question is, what is the solution for people in that situation? What is their solution?
There is
Should they have? They should have no. They should have no. I'm assuming you. Tell me if I'm wrong. You believe they should not have a child?
oh no, there shouldn't be. How come they
Okay.
can have a child?
Okay.
Male and male. How come they can have a child?
Oh, okay. Okay. So you believe
You
they
can't
should
adopt
grow
a
up?
child. They
Okay,
cannot
that's fine.
adopt a
That's
child.
fine.
Uh-huh.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Now you believe that they should grow up. They should grow old alone with no family.
Yeah, that's how you choose your choice. That's what you want it to be.
So you believe it's a choice. So you believe it's a choice. They
No,
chose
no,
to be that way.
that means you're going against the natural process. So we're not giving you any preferences for you.
Tell me if I'm misunderstanding you. You believe they have chosen to go against a natural process.
Face the consequence. Yeah.
I'm not talking about any particular behavior. I'm talking about the fact that someone is not attracted to the opposite sex. You believe that they have chosen to not be attracted to the opposite sex.
Yeah, because I think it is not an inborn. Their parents were not.
Okay.
Their
Okay.
parents were not. He
Okay.
wasn't born.
But
He wasn't
I
born
just
to
want to
be
make
a
sure
male.
I just want to make sure I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
So
parents are not. How
okay,
come? Where did he get it?
okay. That's fine. That's fine. I understand the question. I understand your question. All right. But there are entire books full of conditions. And I'm not saying that this is actually a disease. That's okay. Whether you think it's a disease or not, I'm not saying it's actually a disease. But there are entire books in the medical field of all sorts of conditions that people can have that the parents did not have. So the simple fact that someone has a certain condition or is in a certain situation, even though their parents were not, that does not mean that they chose that situation necessarily. It also doesn't necessarily mean that they have it in their DNA. There are many different factors, many different causes in the world that can cause different things to happen. If you want, I can give you some examples. In this particular case, it can be, and by the way, there is a lot of evidence that there is some sort of genetic component to it. Being a component, though, being a genetic factor, is not the same as saying that DNA made it happen. Many conditions result from multiple factors, more than one thing occurring to the same person. And I don't believe that every person who is gay necessarily has a genetic component to it. But there is a lot of evidence that such exists. But even if there's not, even if there's no genetic component, all right, there's also many other things that can happen. When a child is in the womb, if a mother takes certain medications, it can affect the flush of hormones in the womb, which directly impact the way that a person's genes develop. So they may not have a gene to be gay, but you can have a certain flush, a flood of hormones over a child at the right, or rather at the wrong stage of the child's development in the mother. And if that, let's say it's a boy, let's say it's at the point at which a boy begins to develop into a boy, because there's a point in the development of a embryo that it's not developing as a boy. I don't know if you know that, but that's why every boy has nipples. Every man has nipples because at first every embryo begins developing as if it's a girl. The genes are not female genes. I'm not saying that. But the body begins developing as if it's a girl, and then there's a certain stage in the pregnancy where the genes switch on and become sensitive to male hormones, and then the male hormones begin to cause the boy's body to develop like a boy. If a mother is taking certain medications, or if she goes through certain traumatic experiences while she's pregnant, if that happens at that point in the child's development, it can cause a flood of estrogen, which are female hormones, that can stunt the growth or the male development of the body. Sometimes this causes the boy to not develop into a full boy, and he ends up being like half and half. Other times, he may develop more like a boy, but the flood of estrogen changes the way that his brain develops. So these are things that can happen even if there's no gay gene. All right. Um, and there are things that might happen even after they were born. These things don't just suddenly stop as soon as they're born. The human brain is not fully developed until I think even in the early 20s. I don't remember the exact age, but you can look that up. But my point is that number one, there does not have to be a gene making someone gay or lesbian or trans in order for a person to end up gay or trans or lesbian, even though they didn't choose it. There's more than one possibility. And two, there's simply zero evidence that people choose to be gay or lesbian. That's well, number two in causes, but that's something that really religious people need to understand, because you can't give a solution to these people without recognizing that.
I
For
disagree
example,
on the second
you
point.
for example, you've not given any solution. All you have said is that if they grow old with no child, that's their fault because they chose this path. All
Uh,
right. And if that's not what you meant, you can explain yourself again.
yeah, sure. Okay, let me tell you. The second point you said that there is a zero evidence for people chose to be,
Correct.
gay. No,
Correct.
there is plenty of evidence. Even my co-workers, I worked with them.
Okay.
He was having a family with
Yeah.
and with the kids and everything, and on
Okay.
one fine day he became gay because he hated
Did
women
he say
because
that? Did he say that?
he's living like a gay right now. Exactly, he's having a male partner. He left
Yes.
his
Yes. Yes. But
female partner.
but did
Now,
he?
yeah,
Go ahead.
let me finish it. So what is his basis? Because he
Mhm.
had a bad experience with a
Mhm.
woman. He didn't.
Okay.
His lifestyle was really bad, but he had baby, and he was a good father, and he was having kids, grown up, everything. But just because some incidents in his life, just because something happened with his wife and him, so he didn't expect that life. So he chose that when I'm be with a male, I'll be very
Mhm.
happy because there is no problem with me. That is means he is not a person incomplete, because if a complete person would face anything in his life to manage things, and you can be succeed. That's what a man is. You are just afraid and avoiding something and jumping
Mhm.
into other without not knowing anything of that, until unless you're going to experience what it is going to have to be. Then one fine day you'll be like, I don't want this one, and you'll go back again. See, that's what I'm telling. It's a mindset. You're making it up. It is you or your choices. Not only men. I've seen women. Women
Mhm.
just they just left men because they couldn't cope with that. They after having everything, after establishing everything. Sometimes women turn into lesbians because they couldn't get married. They couldn't find men. No man was there for them. So that's what, like, okay, because I couldn't find, I'm disappointed. So now I'm going to go with a woman. So that's why there's so many examples existing in these conditions.
Okay.
Their choice, they choose it. Knowingly they choose it. Knowingly they choose it. Because
Okay.
sometimes they feel that femininity, we are something great. We can do much better than them. I don't care, man. I can do things up. This mentality also there sometimes to choose women to women. There's a men. So there are people that choose their life like that, Rabbi. I mean, it is not only the gene part of it. It is you choose what your life. So that should be a limitations in their lifestyles that government should bring in. Like, men and men should not bring someone's children,
Yes. Yes.
somebody else.
You've made that point. You've made that point.
So these are the things that if you want to go and live, nobody can control it. I mean, like, you're going to live in the underworld, like, in Islamic countries especially. I'm not blaming
Mhm.
Islamic countries. In Islamic countries, the law is very strict and rules are very strict, and it is very difficult for them to get marry, that a woman, because they have to pay a lot of money, because the groom has to pay a lot of money to get a girl. It's
Can I
not
ask you
easy.
a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I already asked it a few times, but I did not get an answer. So I want to know clearly.
Remind me.
Okay. I want to know clearly. Everything you have said, I already know. And I think most people already know these things.
Okay, what's the
However,
question? Mhm.
however, I suspect there is a lot of interpretation in what you're saying beyond just what you've objectively seen. There's a difference between seeing or hearing something objectively from someone and drawing your own conclusions about what you're seeing. So I'm not debating that this man may have had a family and a wife, and then from your perspective, just one day randomly he decided to be gay. I'm not debating that, okay? And I know that there are women who have been married and had kids, and then they end up being lesbian. I'm not debating that. I know that happens. My question to you is, and tell me honestly, and I would prefer if you say, recognizing that you're saying this before God, okay? Tell me honestly, did this man tell you, oh, I just woke up one day and I was gay? Did he tell you, or did he tell you, I'm choosing to be gay? Did he say that? Did he use the word, I chose to be gay? Do you remember him specifically saying that? Or do you have any doubt about him specifically saying, I chose to be gay?
It's not about the one fine when I woke up, I become a gay. It is not
Hmm.
that way because it is tired of women.
Okay, but do you
Yes,
do you remember him ever telling you, "I chose to be gay," or do you remember him ever telling you, "I chose to be gay because I give up on women"? Did he ever tell you that,
that's what it
or
is.
did
That's what it
you're
is. And the
saying that's
second,
what it is? But do you
that's what.
remember him say before God? Do you remember him in those words, in these words? I chose to be gay because I give up on women. Did you ever hear him use the word choose?
It is not. I mean, like, I'll tell you one thing. It's not about the choose or,
Well,
uh,
maybe
I.
maybe he
Uh,
did choose. Maybe let's assume he chose. Maybe he
yeah,
did choose. Okay?
he said
Maybe he
he chose a
chose. I
word as a
don't I don't
person.
know. I don't know if he chose. Please allow me to finish. Maybe he chose. I don't know if he chose or not. However, if a person did not tell you that he chose, then we have to recognize that that is your own conclusion, okay? He may have chosen, maybe he didn't. But if he did not tell you that, then you don't honestly know. You're assuming that in order to make sense of the situation from what you already believe to be true. I do believe that some people, I personally, and I'm going to say it's my belief, I'm not going to say it's a fact, okay? I do believe that some people can choose to live a gay lifestyle. That doesn't mean they chose to be gay. You have to recognize that there's a difference between when you say that someone is gay, what that means, and maybe you don't know what it means exactly. In standard usage of the word gay or homosexual, that word means that they are not attracted to the opposite sex. Okay? Someone is able to be gay or homosexual, meaning that they are not attracted to the opposite sex, while they never did anything related to that tendency. Someone can be gay and never did anything with someone of the same sex. There could be a gay man who never had any relationship of any type sexually with another man, but they're still gay because they're not attracted to the opposite sex. You can have someone who is bisexual. Bisexual means that they're attracted to both sexes. You can have someone who is bisexual, who has been bisexual since they were 12 or 13 years old, and they chose to get married because their family expected them to get married, or they fell in love with a woman, and then they got tired of that woman. They were not willing to work through the problems of their marriage, like you said, right? Right? I believe this happens. They just give up on their wife, maybe they give up on women, and then they go to be with a man. But if someone is bisexual, it is not that they suddenly became gay, and it's also not that they chose to be gay. They may have already been attracted to both. And then at one point they gave up on the woman and they tried to be with a man. That is different from a normal gay person. If someone is bisexual, they're attracted to both. I think that probably, and from what I've seen in statistics, and when we talk about these things, if you're talking about something and you want to give a actual solution to it, we have to be willing to recognize reality. We have to talk to people. We can't just assume that we know what they're doing. If we don't talk to them, if we don't have an honest conversation with them, we don't know what they're experiencing. Surveys have shown, statistics have shown, asking people around the United States, are you only attracted to females? Are you only attracted to your own sex? Are you attracted to both? Statistics have shown that there are more bisexual people than gay people. Bisexual meaning they like both. So, do you honestly know? Maybe that man was bisexual. Did he tell you? Go ahead.
Okay, sir. I heard you loud and clear. And one thing I want, one thing I want to tell you, one thing. I do not disrespect any human being. Okay, it's
Hmm.
no way possible that I will never, just because I would not separate them, I would not disrespect them. Respect, I give my due diligence of respect to each and everyone. I treat them equally. That's so totally different point of view. when you talk about the bisexual, people can be lustful. People are
Hmm.
people want more in their lust. They can do anything they want. There are a lot of tons of people in the world. They are bisexual, and they are because they are lustful. It is lust. This is lust. I'm not branding them as gay or lesbian, but they're lustful people. There are there like So in women and in men, both they have this bisexual people are there, always there. Okay, and the
Do you think
second thing,
all people are? Do you think everybody is bisexual?
not everybody, but there are people. I said that. I didn't say there
No, I'm
is
just asking to
everybody.
know what you think. Okay.
No, no, no. There are people strictly very like straight. They don't
Okay.
do any. No, there are. I mean, like and there are bisexuals. There are lust.
Hmm.
Lust is there. Lust is always there. Okay, so and there are people only they're interested. This all your mindset. This is what I'm think. I was about to ask you a question. How you
Okay.
decide? How you decide a man and a female? Is it through your mind or is it through your body structure, the body parts? That
It's so
how
fun.
how a physician describes he's a man and female. When the
Hmm.
baby born, that baby doesn't have anything in their mind because it's empty. It's very plain and simple. How the doctor writes it: baby born, what's the sex, male or female? Through the mind, I'm seeing he's a gay, but his body part is female. He won't do that. He's
Hmm.
putting exactly a female baby, a male baby. That's it, period. There it goes. Then everything develops afterwards that you adopt on the go. The circumstances, the situations where you are, how you're seeing, what you're reading, what you're doing, everything's on you. It's been imposed. That's how you're
You don't.
becoming one.
You don't think there is. You don't think there is any difference in the male brain and the female brain?
I mean, male brain and the female brain, of course. That's why there is a difference in the organs. Yes, there is a difference in the organs in your
So you
body
don't.
organ.
So you recognize that
But
there's a difference between
no,
male and female, not only below but also in the head. There's a
no,
difference.
no. The organs are okay, my brother, my rabbi. Organs. There are different organs for male and female.
I'm
Brain
asking
is
about
an
the brain.
brain is an organ. You're not talking about the thoughts or process.
Yeah,
That's
I
different.
want you to be specific. So you recognize that male and female brains are generally different. There are actual differences in the brain.
I'm not sure. I don't know what exactly the organ. Is that really
There
a
are
different
there
organ?
are there are
I know the
physical
two.
differences in the brain
I know the
between males and
reproductive organs
females.
are different. I know the reproductive organs are different. That's
Okay.
I know. Male reproductive organ different. Female. I'm not sure about the eye is different for female and
So we
male. No.
should, but if we talk about these things on an authoritative level, we need to educate ourselves about these things.
Yeah.
If the brain of a male and a female is physically different, I am not
Function.
talking about just,
Okay.
I'm not only talking about thoughts. If the brain of a female is physically different from the brain of a male, that's an important factor. That's an important fact to take into consideration when you talk about these topics. And people should learn these things if they want to be as educated as they can be about these topics. I don't debate with you about there being a difference between men and women. I think the difference between men, I know, don't just think. I know that the difference between men and women is more different even than what you're saying. Because I know from university and from researching by myself, scientific studies about human brains, that I know that the difference between men and women, it's not only in the genitals downstairs, it's also physically in the brain, not only in thoughts, but there's physical differences in the size and the structure of the brain, differences between men and women. And because I know that this topic is not always as simple as people assume. That means that a person can be, that there's a potential, and we know that this happens because there are different types of hermaphrodite, of intersex people. There are different types of androgynous people. we know that a person can appear like a normal female downstairs. She could have female genitalia, and she might have the brain that is not developed like a normal female. And this can happen from birth. It doesn't necessarily mean it's in the genes, but it can be a result of hormonal problems. Sometimes it's a problem of gene expression, sometimes, because there are deformities, there are developmental abnormalities, things that just happen, not that they're supposed to, but sometimes they're just weird things that happen when people develop. And we need to know that these things are real. They're not always just a matter of choice. One second. Give me 30 seconds. I agree that there's more of a choice if someone is bisexual. If someone's bisexual, they have more of a choice. Will I go with a man or a woman? And I would not say it's always easy for them. I don't know. But I suspect it's not simple, but they have some kind of a choice. If someone is gay, that's a different situation. And I don't know that you personally even know what is the situation of every person in this issue. Uh, you might assume or think you know, but if we don't know or understand all the factors, then we really need to learn more about it. I mean, I personally am 100 and I'm infinitely convinced. All right, and I can explain why in a different because we I don't want to take too much time, but I am infinitely convinced that it is not a choice for everyone, whether they are gay or straight. But I agree with you, completely agree that people have a choice in their behavior. You can choose your behavior, and that's not always simple, but you don't choose your whether you're attracted to females or not. Yes, sir.
Okay. What? Okay, sir. Okay. I have something. The way that you're talking right now, I have some. I mean, like something to say about it. Looks like that you read lot of subject materials
Absolutely,
in.
absolutely.
Okay, it's you sound like that. Looks like that those materials are some kind of a justification materials for how it was and it is, rather than the reality of the things. Because if in a common world, even when you go to beginning the day of Cain and Abel, or
Yeah.
Adam and Eve world, if you go there, Adam and Eve didn't decide when the Cain
Mhm.
and Abel was born, oh, this brain is smaller than a female brain, so he's male. So they didn't
Okay.
decide go to okay.
No, no,
They
no,
just
no, no. You may have
okay.
misunderstood me. I think you did misunderstand me. I am not debating, I'm not disagreeing with you whether a person is a male or female based on their brain. I'm not saying that. I believe that a person is a male if they have male genitalia. I believe a person is a female if they have female genitalia. But I
No,
am
but what? No, no. What
recognizing.
I'm cutting. I'm cutting. There. I'm stopping. Excuse me,
Okay,
brother. Bye.
go
The
ahead. Go ahead.
reason why I'm going is like that is because somebody is justifying in the
Hmm.
articles whatever you read, you studied before. Like he was a male guy, but his brain was female brain. So think that. That's how he's going to operate. That because the brain is the master guy. He's the one who controls everything. Even though he has a male organ, but his brain is female. So that's how he's going to operate. So they're trying to justify that. They're
There
trying to
are people. There are people who try to do this.
yeah.
I, I'm not trying to do this. There are
No,
people
no,
who
no.
try to do this.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
recognize that there are people who try to do this. But that does not get rid of the fact of the matter that male and female brains are actually different. They're different. That's a fact. It
Could
doesn't
be.
matter that someone, it doesn't, the fact that male and female brains are different is regardless of whether someone wants to take this fact and try to use it to prove some other agenda. That's a different matter. The way we apply these facts and interpret what they mean, that's a different topic. I don't believe that just because someone feels a certain way, that that means they should behave the way they feel. I don't agree with that. I'm not arguing for that.
Well, there is
But
a law. There's a law. That there's a in American system. There's a law. You know that in Maryland they impose a law.
okay.
The law is that You, if you think in your mind, it's all about thought process. If you
Yeah.
feel, if you think, if you feel you're a female, you're allowed to go to female toilet.
I think this is
That's
ridiculous and
yeah,
dangerous.
that is
You
yeah,
need
that
to
is
understand before we continue with any sort of discussions about these things,
yeah.
it's a mistake to think that recognizing something is objectively true, such as the difference between male and female brains. Do not think that just because I agree with that point, that I agree with some other kinds of points. I think that that is not only ridiculous, but it's dangerous and should be strongly opposed. I don't advocate that at all, just to be clear. But at the same time, religious communities, religious leaders cannot provide uh, actual beneficial solutions to real problems if they do not even really understand what the problem is, especially if they think that the problem is something that it's not. And that means that people need to be educated about matters. That does not mean they have to agree for a physical male that he can just go into a girl's bathroom. That doesn't mean they have to agree with that. But people need to be a lot more educated than they usually are. And religious establishments usually downplay the importance of scientific research, which is not good. That strengthens those who hate religion. That gives strength to people who reject God. Because then they can say, oh, you guys are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. And sometimes they might be a little bit right. Usually, the strongest, most powerful evil, things which are evil, that are the most powerful of evil things, is evil things or evil people who have some element of truth in them. And if they have an element of truth in their arguments, but they're using the truth in a bad way, if the good people are not able to recognize what little bit is true in the bad side, if the good people are not able to recognize that little bit of truth and then take that truth away from the evil people, reclaim it, and then put it in the right context, then the good people are weakened. They don't have the strength that they should have. And because they're not willing to recognize the little bit of truth on the bad side, they're actually giving strength to the bad side, not on purpose. They're not giving strength to bad people on purpose. But we have, in every, not just on this topic, on every topic, whether we are talking about Hamas, whether we're talking about Iran or Pakistan, China, it doesn't matter. We have to recognize that there is some element of truth in all of these ideologies. Doesn't mean all of it's true. We have to recognize it and try to find what part of it is true and then give an answer to that truth. If we cannot do that, then we cannot solve the problem and we're actually giving strength to our enemies. It's a real problem. We have to be willing to have these kinds of, these are good discussions because they're not usually had. Most religious people, I give you a lot of credit. Most religious people would not even have had this discussion to this point. They would have resorted to calling me names, accusing me of things, calling me an atheist, I don't know what. And this would be their argument. And that is not an argument. That's that's the kind of stupid arguments that our enemies make. They would say you're racist or whatever. It's the same kind of stupidity. But we have to be
Yeah,
willing to learn. We have to be willing to learn.
yeah, I understand thoroughly that as I said, that I respect the humanity and respect everybody and everyone equally. But the problem is that I know that there are a lot of problems this community is facing in the world. There are so many practical issues they couldn't able to come out. I understand thoroughly. I mean, in any country, in India, everywhere, there's a lot of issues, social issues, communal issues. So many things are there.
But we can't give solutions to them unless we understand as much as we
Right,
can, understand
and
the whole
thoroughly.
problem. And they
But they
don't usually
also,
understand it. They don't usually
one
understand it.
yeah, one thing, as I said, that they also should think, okay, if you become a gay or lesbian, that's fine. Why would you try to form a family and bring a baby inside where the baby doesn't belongs to you and the baby
People
grows into
don't
one?
people don't magically become gay. It's not a choice.
No.
This is just simply false. It's false. But can I suggest a solution? because I've only been telling you this is wrong. I haven't offered solutions.
Okay.
Okay, because I know we do need to cut it short. I appreciate the amount of time you've been willing to give on this topic.
Yes, sir.
So the biggest mistake that the religious establishment has made regarding this topic is that, oh, it's simply a choice. They have simply chosen to be gay. Now, I've already agreed with you. When it comes to someone who's bisexual, they have some degree of choice. Some degree of choice. Okay. And I don't think it's necessarily simple for them. I doubt that it's simple for them. But they cannot even come to a pastor or a rabbi to get good, honest, loving advice if the rabbi or the pastor is not even willing to listen to what their situation actually is. That's usually what happens. That's with bisexual people. Gay people, they don't have a choice in the fact that they are not attracted to women. You said that there was a guy who had a family and then he left his wife and he went to some man, all right? Maybe he was bisexual. If we do not really know, then we can't really talk about it. We certainly cannot say he just chose to be gay. From the amount of people I've discussed this topic with, I find that extremely unlikely. And if it happened, it would be an exceptional case. The same way that there are different types of Indian people who have different backgrounds, they're not all the same. Not everybody who is with a member of the same sex has the same background. Okay, but a normal gay person, they usually did not choose from early ages. We're talking about like sometimes even from the age of 9 or 10, they already knew that they were gay, even if they didn't do anything. What I'm here to say on this topic specifically, if we can remember one thing on this topic, it's that telling someone who knows they did not make a choice, telling them that you chose is not going to help anything. That's number one. It's like me asking you, did you choose that you are attracted to women? All right. If you tell a gay person you chose to be attracted to men, that's like me telling a straight person you chose to be attracted to women. No, they didn't. A straight guy just naturally developed an attraction to women. He didn't have to force it to happen. He chooses how he behaves. Okay, he chooses whether or not he's going to wait until he's married. He chooses whether he's going to associate with other people who share good values, or if he chooses to be with people who want to go to prostitutes. That's a matter of choice. But the fact that he's attracted to women, he did not choose. It naturally happened. For some people, naturally for them, they never developed an attraction to the opposite sex. So what the religious world needs to recognize is that at least with these people, it may not be all bisexual people, but at least with those who did not choose, we need to figure out an option for them. I'm going to give a few here. I'm not saying they're the best option for everybody, but I think if it's possible for them, this is what they should be encouraged to do. And I'm saying this because I've never heard rabbis or pastors give this option. The religious community, if they are a loving community that truly loves their neighbor as themselves, which they claim, it's not always the case, but they say that they do, then the religious community needs to help a gay person. If it's a gay person who wants to keep Torah, wants to do what's right, they need to help him find someone of the opposite sex who does not have a normal sex drive, right? Some women, the same way that some women are lesbians, right? There are also some women who they're not necessarily lesbians, but they don't really care about sex that much. All right, there are different levels. It's not true that everybody's exactly the same. We're just not. There are differences among people. There are some general rules, some things that are generally true, but then there's also variation. The religious establishment, the pastors, the rabbis, the head of a women's club, because a lot of churches have women's clubs or women's study groups. These people need to talk to each other about these topics, not be ashamed to talk about it, and help find a woman to match with the God-fearing gay person, and say, do you have a friend who she's going through a divorce? Oh, why is she going? I'm just giving an example. There's a woman, she's going through a divorce. Why is she going through a divorce? Because her husband wants sex all the time and she just doesn't want to do it. All right. Some women, some marriages fall apart because they're not a good match sexually. Sometimes most men want sex more than women. That's usually what the case is. All right. If there's a woman who's divorcing and the problem was something like this, and it should not be too difficult to find if you're in a normal sized community, help find a woman like this for a guy who does not have strong desires for women. Maybe that's a good match. I'm not saying it's perfect, but that would be better than telling a gay man, you need to grow up alone and die alone. And when you get sick, no one should be around you. You should never have children because you chose to be gay. Telling them that when they know that's not true, not only is it not going to help them, but it's going to push them away from God. That's what's happening. It pushes them away from God for no good reason. Imagine if you were in a community and they said just because you have darker skin or just because you're in India that you need to be pushed away. You're not going to
Didn't
think that that religion
didn't
is the right
didn't
religion.
didn't God punish Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yes, yes.
So okay,
Does it say
yeah,
anywhere in the
yeah.
Bible that God punished them for being gay? No.
But it was hike. It
The
was
only
hike.
record there is that they attempted rape and God had already decided to punish Sodom and Gomorrah even before that happened. Even before that happened.
No, but
And the prophet
there's
Ezekiel
immorality also in hike. The
And
immorality
the
also in
prophet
hike.
Ezekiel and the prophet Ezekiel refers back to Sodom and Gomorrah and says that you, Sodom and Gomorrah, were punished for these sins. He lists the sins, and he did not list the one sin that everyone thinks of. He didn't. What he mentions is that they were being unjust to the poor, and they were being mean to foreigners.
Okay.
He could have easily said, and they were all a bunch of gay people. He didn't say that. And
No,
you also need to
he
think
didn't.
about it. The men of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Bible says all the men of the city, all the men of the city surrounded the house. All right. And they tried to rape. Okay. If all the men of that city were gay, there would not have been women in that city. The city would have died out. Like, these people probably had wives. They probably had daughters. These were not normal gay people. Maybe all of them were bisexual. Maybe. What's more likely is that in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was one case of what archaeologists know was a common behavior in the ancient Middle East. There was a common behavior. It's also talked about in the Talmud, by the way, that certain corrupt societies, when they would conquer other people, they would rape the men in a way to humiliate the men. Not because they were attracted to the men, but as a way of humiliating them. And in the Talmud, they have a record about this that even some of the prophets of Israel were raped when they were required to go to a certain king of Babylon. I think Nebuchadnezzar is the one that I'm thinking of specifically. He made the leaders of all these different countries come, countries he had conquered. They had to come and stand before him once a year. And once a year, they would all get raped. And I think Zechariah, the prophet, was one of them that's mentioned in the Talmud as being raped. And it wasn't that he loved these people or was attracted to them. It's a way of humiliating them. It's like knowing your place. But my main point here is that to apply the the fact that some people are gay and say that makes them like Sodom and Gomorrah, it's not honest. It's just not honest. I don't think people are trying to be dishonest about it, but that is not what the Bible says. You have another story in the book of Judges. I believe it's chapter 19, where you had a very similar case. Very similar case. They surrounded the city of a man. He had a visitor come visit the city. All right, this is Book of Judges, chapter 19. They banged on the door. It's almost word for word like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. They're banging on the door and they ask for the male guests. They're asking for the male guests, okay? And then he gives them his daughter. Unlike in Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot did not actually give his daughter to them. He thought about it. He didn't give these men his daughter. In the book of Judges, the guy actually gives them his daughter, throws the daughter out there, and then they rape the daughter. All night long, they rape the daughter. These men were obviously not gay. These are not gay men. They're just disgusting, like you mentioned, overly consumed with lust. And more than likely, in both of these cases, it was part of a general culture that existed in the Middle East at that time, where the way you let a person who was new in your city know that they are lower class was that you rape them. Not because you're attracted to them. It was a cultural belief that this is how you put them in their place. You let them know you are second class. How do you do that? You rape them. That's what they were doing. So in the book of Judges, they wanted a man. They wanted to rape a man. He threw his daughter. They raped the daughter all night long until she died. And then it says, I don't remember who in the story did it. I forget exactly, but they cut her into 12 pieces and sent her to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. If we conclude from the story of Sodom and Gomorrah that all gay people are evil and they all chose to be evil because of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and they attempted rape, if that's the basis for your concluding that, then in the story of the book of Judges, chapter 19, we should make the same conclusion about having sex with a woman, that it's evil because they raped this woman. That's not logical. It's just simply not logical. We can say that a man and a man being together is not the proper plan of God. We can say that without saying that people chose to be gay and without making these this is a false equivalency.
Yeah, even I mean that's an isolated incident that you were talking about, but even there is a saying, but it's not sure, not because David in his life, his friend, who was that guy that he always been very
Jonathan,
close, Jonathan. There
my
you go.
video, by the way, is not live. My video is
Okay,
going
okay,
behind like 12
okay.
seconds.
Let's go and conclude this. It's an interesting topic. We'll talk later, and we'll talk later about this one. We started with the Palestine, we started with the Hamas, and somehow we ended up here. Something, yeah, we
Let's
can
not
talk a
forget
lot
the
about
main
this.
point. The main point, our main point here was that there are certain people who are not gay who are trying to use the LGBTQ community with
Mhm.
other community issues to divide civilized society in order to destroy civilized society and replace
Yeah,
it with something which is not good, which has
yeah,
led to the murder of millions of people. That's my number one point that got us into this topic.
yes, sir.
And we need to oppose it. We don't need to be mean to people
Yeah,
to oppose it. As you said, we can disagree with certain lifestyles without treating those people like they are a piece of crap, right?
yeah,
We can disagree with how someone lives while still being a decent person. We are not Hamas, right? We're not
yes,
going to go and kill people just because we disagree with them. And I
yes,
believe you said that several times, and
yes, sir.
that makes us different from them.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Rabbi. It was pleasure. It was nice talking to you. It is always nice to talk to you. We
God
never
bless you.
even, yeah, we never even, see the time how much it flies off, and we'll continue this topic sometime later. And nice seeing you back again. Talk to you later, and
Hashem
looking
yishmerecha. God
forward
bless
to.
you.
God
Keep
bless you,
you.
Baruch Hashem.
Shavua tov.
Yep.
Adon olam. Loko. Azai melech. Azai
There you go.
melech.
בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא עובר והוא עובר והוא